It's the first line in any Star Wars movie ever was uttered by yourself, i.e. C-3PO.
What was it?
Oh, okay, it's a longer line.
Come on,
I can't remember it, to be honest, but it is a longer line, isn't it? It's a disaster. There's somebody's approaching. Go on, off you go.
Did you hear that? They shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure. There'll be no escape for the princess this time. I can't do it without laughing.
And you did voice the, C-3PO, but then you found out, didn't you, that in post-production they were, George Lucas wasn't that happy with your performance initially, and he was auditioning people like Richard Dreyfuss and various other.
It's true. I only
names.
found out once I'd reached Hollywood. I'm there absolutely kind of strange with the jet lag. I'm in this dream world with the Hollywood sign up there. Yeah. I think that's the Hollywood sign for real. And then just below it was the studio that I was in North Hollywood. And yes, George arrived at the moment I discovered from the engineer that about 30 other people had been in the studio to kind of futz around with what was on screen with their vocal interpretation. Yeah. I got to admit, I was in shock.
You were in shock, but obviously the reason you were there is because everybody told him that he was wrong and you were the man.
Exactly.
Thank God for those people.
Yes, thank you. If you're still around, thank you, guys. Whoever you were. And of course, Richard Dreyfuss. And the cute thing is that later, because he failed the audition. Sorry, Richard. But a year later, there I am on the Oscars with him backstage, and he is carrying an Oscar for Best Actor. So, he kind of lucked out in the end.
Because C-3PO and R2-D2
bit rubbish.
Go on stage with Mark Hamill and Bob Hope at the Oscars to present a Close Encounters Academy Award.
Yes, that's right.
It's fantastic.
And there I am meeting these wonderful stars. I talk about it briefly. Betty Davis, total joy, absolutely, because she was so dour and wonderful and real.
And then because nobody recognised you, because you don't look like C-3PO, you look like you, backstage, you were thrown out, weren't you?
Nearly arrested, yeah. It was a slightly scary moment because my brain wasn't totally functioning with jet lag. And I hadn't got any ID because, as British people, you don't have to carry ID. So it's like a bit of an, pressure suddenly. Yeah. It was in the dressing room. They'd given me one.
So, Anthony, Star Wars was a big, huge, fat hit. Were you then convinced this was your future?
No, not really, because the thing was a hit, but nobody was allowed to know I was in it.
I know.
I was this big kind of secret thing that, so all the other guys were going off around the world, getting all the attention. And I was sitting at home and thinking, well, excuse me, I was in it too. And that was, I will admit, a tough time.
And that's it. You talk about that, and not only was it a secret, but they made it more and more and more of a secret. So actually, they did talk about you a bit, and then they thought, no, we can't let them believe that there's a human being in this. C-3PO has to be a robot with no human influence.
That's right, and it was difficult because it had, pretty tough shoot. So I'm watching all these publicity things and thinking, well, what about me, whatever, because they really wanted people to think that the technology was real, and we are still so far away from that. But it's a kind of double-edged thing because it was kind of a compliment that the audience thought my performance was a real robot. That was because that's what I intended.
Funny, nice, vulnerable, a vulnerable, superpowered robot. It's amazing. And so people have described C-3PO's voice as maybe a sort of slightly paranoid English butler.
Very much so, and that's the way I kind of read the script. Cause
a nervy English butler.
A nervy, uptight, very uptight English butler. Very clever, and totally ignored. He gets told to shut up. He's bullied all the time. I mean, he is a really classical, tragic, white-faced clown, because people just trash him all the time, shove him. And you slightly wonder, why he puts up with it. But his loyalty makes him stay with all these humans.
So how many movies now will you have been... Come December the 19th, how many movies will you have been in?
I will have been all 11 Star Wars movies because you've got the Solo story and you've got Rogue One, that really dark one, which I liked.
And then there was the Donnie and Marie Star Wars Christmas special, which you were in as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which you talk about, which is hilarious. Well, it's hilarious now. Probably wasn't that hilarious back then.
It was bewildering. I mean, I was surrounded by all this sort of toothiness and magic.
For whatever lack of respect you did receive in the first few years, and that became fixed. That was the opposite was the case when you went to work with the Muppets, because they got you because you operate in their world, don't you?
Can you imagine? I spent 3 years at drama school trying, to be a serious actor, and there I am on the Muppet Show, and just so thrilled. So I felt so at home there. It was magic because there you got really hidden people, their arms up in their air, or they're wearing a
Well,
costume.
they know how you feel.
They know how. Yeah, total respect.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and then Sesame Street, absolute joy there in New York.
Okay,
I could have stayed there forever.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show with Sky.